Evelyn Montgomery, a 38-year-old woman with an independent spirit and a captivating personality, lives a seemingly flawless daily life with her husband, Conrad Sterling. From the beginning of their relationship, Conrad was the kind of man any woman would dream of: successful, confident, and deeply involved in his business. He was not only attractive and charming, but also someone who seemed to genuinely care about Evelyn. Together, they formed a couple that anyone would point to as the example of a solid and enviable union. Living in a mansion of classical architecture in the suburbs of Boston, Evelyn had become accustomed to a lifestyle full of comforts. Mornings began with the fresh smell of coffee being prepared by the housekeeper, while the soft sound of classical music filled the room. Evelyn enjoyed the view of the well-kept garden, where flowers of various colors blended in harmony, giving a touch of tranquil beauty to her days. In the eyes of everyone, she was a happy woman, who didn't have to worry about anything other than her daily activities and dedicating herself to her hobby of painting. Conrad, on the other hand, was a respected businessman in the investment sector, known for his ability to turn risks into profitable opportunities. His business required constant travel and hours of dedication, but he always assured Evelyn that everything he did was for them. She admired her husband's determination and felt grateful to have someone so dedicated to the couple's success. Their relationship was marked by a silent complicity, where looks and gestures were worth more than words. He always surprised her with small gifts and affectionate messages, even in the most hectic weeks. And, although he spent long periods of time on business trips, Evelyn never had reason to distrust Conrad. For her, his physical absence was just an extension of the commitment and sacrifice he made for the well-being of both of them. But, on the rare occasions when she felt alone, Evelyn preferred to ignore any disturbing thoughts, convincing herself that her love for Conrad was enough to fill any void. She was convinced that he was honest and loyal, and that their relationship was solid enough to withstand any obstacle. It was as if Evelyn were living in a modern fairy tale, surrounded by the comfort and security of an ideal marriage. Everything seemed under control until a rainy Thursday night. Conrad was on yet another of his business trips, this time to an important conference in Chicago. Evelyn was used to his absence on these occasions. Travel was part of his routine as a businessman. She tried to keep herself busy with preparations for an exhibition of her paintings, immersing herself in her artwork and the details of each canvas to stave off the loneliness that occasionally bothered her. That evening, after putting on some relaxing music and making a glass of wine, Evelyn sat down to review her latest works. The tranquility of the house, the sound of falling rain and the soft light from the lamp created a cozy, almost poetic atmosphere. But as she contemplated one of her paintings, the ringing of the telephone broke the silence, making her jump. Evelyn rarely received calls late at night, and a strange premonition occurred to her. When she answered, a female voice she didn't recognize asked for her, formally and cautiously. "Is this Evelyn Montgomery?" asked the woman on the other end of the line. Confused and curious, Evelyn nodded. The woman introduced herself as Lila, without giving many details about who she was or how she knew Conrad. In a calm voice, but full of something that Evelyn couldn't immediately identify, Lila let out an enigmatic sentence. "I hope you're well, Evelyn. I just wanted to say, sometimes, the people we love the most hide secrets we don't imagine. Take care of yourself." Before Evelyn could ask anything, the call ended. She stared at the phone, her heart beating fast. The enigmatic phrase and the way the woman had hung up without explanation began to torment her. Who was this Lila, and what did she mean by that, were questions that Evelyn couldn't get out of her head. She tried to shake off the idea that there might be something hidden in her relationship with Conrad, but the woman's words had planted a seed of unease in her heart. Evelyn knew that she had always trusted her husband completely. She believed in their commitment and never had any reason to doubt Conrad's sincerity. But as the night wore on, doubt began to take shape, gaining strength. Her mind began to run through memories of times when he had been absent, when he had seemed distant, justifying himself with the hectic routine of business. Were those excuses, in fact, part of something bigger that Evelyn had never suspected? In an attempt to calm herself, she tried to rationalize. It could just be a bad joke, she thought, trying to convince herself that Lila was nothing more than a malicious stranger. But despite her attempts to ignore the discomfort, Evelyn felt that something had changed. That night, the perfect glow of her life began to lose its charm, and a cloud of uncertainty hung over her. Almost instinctively, she felt that she needed answers, not immediately, but sooner or later, something would have to be done to allay the doubt that was now disturbing her peace. The days that followed the mysterious call were especially difficult for Evelyn. As much as she tried to ignore Lila's words, a deep uneasiness took over her thoughts. Every time she saw Conrad, a part of her wanted to confront him, but the other feared what she might discover. The doubt began to affect even her health. Her sleep became irregular, and her appetite, always controlled before, seemed affected by nervousness. Finally, after reflecting on what would be best for her peace of mind, Evelyn decided that she needed to investigate. Not knowing exactly how to act, she sought recommendations from professionals who could help her discreetly. That's how she found Mark Everett, a private detective known for his skill and discretion. He had a solid reputation and was well recommended in the legal world, which gave Evelyn the confidence she needed. They met at a cafe away from the city center, a place where Evelyn felt comfortable and knew she wouldn't be recognized. Mark arrived on time, and his discreet, professional presence made her feel a little more comfortable. He was a middle-aged man with firm features and a calm expression, and he listened attentively to every word Evelyn said as she explained the situation. "I never thought it would come to this, Mark," she said nervously. "But I feel like there's something I can't see, and I need to understand what's going on, even if it hurts me." Mark listened to her without judgment, with a neutral expression that conveyed professionalism and understanding. After Evelyn finished explaining, he asked her some detailed questions about Conrad's lifestyle, the places he frequented, and the specific dates of his travels. Every detail was carefully recorded in his notebook, and Evelyn was impressed by the seriousness with which he took the conversation. "I understand what you're feeling, Evelyn," he replied in a reassuring tone. "You're not the first person to find yourself in this situation. Often the signs are right in front of us, but it's hard to see them without concrete confirmation. My job is to provide you with these answers so that you can decide what to do with complete clarity." After the conversation, Mark reassured her, promising to begin the investigation immediately and discreetly. He explained each step of the process clearly, without promising quick results, but assuring Evelyn that she would receive answers, whether good or bad. Evelyn felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. Now everything was in motion, and she would have to wait patiently for something that could confirm or deny her suspicions. On the way home, Evelyn reflected on what she had just done. Hiring a private investigator felt strange, as if she were crossing an invisible line in her relationship with Conrad. But at the same time, she knew it was the only way to regain her peace of mind. And for the first time, she felt like she might be on the verge of discovering something that could change her life forever. A few days after her meeting with Mark, Evelyn received a discreet message from the detective. He had news and wanted to meet with her for an update. Eager and at the same time fearful of what she was about to hear, she chose a small cafe near Mark's office, in a neighborhood where no one would recognize her. When he arrived, Mark's expression was serious but professional. He sat down across from Evelyn and, without beating around the bush, opened a folder of documents he had with him. "What I'm going to show you is something we need to discuss calmly," he said, bracing her for impact. With steady hands and a careful eye, Mark removed a few photos and placed them on the table. Evelyn felt an immediate chill as she looked at the images. In one of the photos, Conrad appeared next to a smiling younger woman in a restaurant Evelyn didn't know. In another, they were walking into an apartment building together. Evelyn couldn't believe what she was seeing. It seemed impossible that this was the same man who made her feel safe and loved. The woman next to Conrad had a striking face, with delicate features and an air of mystery. Mark informed her that her name was Aurora Shaw, and that she apparently lived a modest life, quite different from the one Evelyn shared with Conrad. The fact that he had a close relationship with this unknown woman made Evelyn feel a knot in her stomach, somewhere between disbelief and anger. "There's something else you need to know," Mark continued, his voice soft, trying not to intensify Evelyn's pain. He took one last photo from the folder and handed it to her. Evelyn froze. In the photo, Conrad was holding the hand of a child, a girl of about 5 years old, with light eyes and wavy brown hair. Evelyn noticed how much the child resembled Conrad, and her heart broke into 1,000 pieces. She began to understand that this was not just a casual lover, there was a hidden family. Evelyn looked through the photos again, trying to take it all in. Her hands were shaking slightly, but she forced herself to maintain her posture. This was not the time to break down, not here, in front of Mark. As much as she wanted to burst into tears and question why Conrad had hidden something so big, Evelyn just looked at the detective, trying to process the information. "How long has this been going on, Mark?" she asked in a thin voice, trying to maintain her composure. Mark informed her that the evidence pointed to at least 3 years of an affair between Conrad and Aurora. Evelyn felt crushed by the revelation. 3 years living a lie, 3 years in which her husband divided his life between two families without her suspecting. After her meeting with Mark, Evelyn drove home in silence, the photos still fresh in her mind. She felt like the perfect facade of her marriage had been ripped away in one fell swoop, and now all that was left was an abyss of questions and intense pain. That night, the once welcoming house felt cold and unfamiliar. She knew her life would never be the same again, and that she would need strength to face the decisions that lay ahead. In the days that followed her devastating discovery, Evelyn could barely look at Conrad without feeling a wave of sadness and anger. Every detail of his daily life now seemed steeped in lies and secrets. The thought of confronting him immediately tempted her, but at the same time, she knew she needed more time. She wanted to observe him, to see if he would notice anything new now that he knew about Aurora and Conrad's daughter. Conrad, oblivious to Evelyn's whirlwind of feelings, continued with the same routine, and his seemingly harmless attitude only served to fuel her distrust. Evelyn, in turn, developed a new sensitivity to his gestures and words. Every sentence, every look, every excuse for being absent seemed loaded with a double meaning, as if she could now see what she had not noticed before. One morning, as he was getting ready for yet another of his business trips, Evelyn observed him carefully. He was, as always, impeccable in his suit, calmly adjusting his tie. When he turned to give him the customary goodbye kiss, Evelyn felt a mixture of disgust and pain. She remained calm, but as soon as he left, she was overcome by a feeling of relief and emptiness at the same time. To vent the tension that was suffocating her, Evelyn began to go through Conrad's things, something she had never done before. She went into his closet and began to rummage through his drawers, the pockets of his suits and coats, looking for any clue that would explain how he had managed to maintain a double life without her suspecting. Among his work papers and restaurant receipts, she found something that made her stop, a small box containing a gold bracelet with a heart-shaped pendant. It was a simple piece of jewelry, with a delicate touch that, she knew, did not suit her style at all. It was certainly not for her. Evelyn imagined the gift being given to Aurora or, perhaps, to their daughter. The discovery made her chest tighten even more, but it also brought a bitter clarity. Everything he said and did was steeped in secrets. From that day on, Evelyn decided to continue her own investigation. Instead of confronting him, she began to observe every detail, as a way of preparing herself for the inevitable confrontation. She remained silent, but her gaze was more attentive than ever. Every phone call, every new excuse or sudden meeting with Conrad was now meticulously recorded in her memory, like pieces of a puzzle she was putting together. Conrad was unaware of the silent transformation that was taking place in Evelyn, nor the silent questions she kept. The smile she wore was increasingly empty, and the touch in her hands was only a reminder of the love that now seemed so distant and unattainable. Evelyn continued her silent investigation. The days passed, and each new discovery increased her desire for answers. She knew that Mark, the detective, had already done a lot, but there was one essential question that he still had not answered: who was Aurora Shaw and how had Conrad become involved with her? Determined to find out more information, Evelyn asked Mark to investigate Aurora's past. She wanted to know who this woman was who had stolen her husband's attention and, even more, what role she had played in Conrad's life. A few days later, Mark returned with a detailed report on Aurora. To her surprise, Evelyn discovered that Aurora came from a simple family and lived a modest life. She had grown up in a small town and worked as an art teacher at a community school. Her reputation was low-key, and her neighbors saw her as a reserved and polite woman known for her devotion to her daughter, Allegra, a 5-year-old girl. When Evelyn saw the photos of Allegra, her heart sank. The little girl had features that were uncannily reminiscent of Conrad, like a miniature version of him, which eliminated any doubt about her paternity. But what caught her attention most were the details Mark had revealed about the relationship between Conrad and Aurora. The two had met at a charity event, where Conrad had made a generous donation to an art project that Aurora was coordinating. According to reports, they had kept in touch ever since, which had gradually developed into a long-distance relationship. Mark also revealed that Conrad seemed to keep Aurora and Allegra comfortable, paying the family's basic expenses and visiting them at regular intervals. Their relationship went far beyond a casual fling. There seemed to be a structure, a commitment that Evelyn never imagined Conrad could have with anyone else. This discovery was a profound blow. Evelyn realized that Conrad was not just keeping a mistress, but rather a parallel family, something built with a dedication that she believed was exclusive to her and their marriage. This completely knocked Evelyn off her feet, and she felt betrayed in every way. More than the presence of another woman, what destroyed her was knowing that he shared moments of love and affection with a daughter, while she could never fulfill her dream of being a mother. Back home, Evelyn sat in the dark, empty room, trying to absorb the full truth of her situation. As much as she tried to remain calm, the tears began to fall silently, as the realization dawned that the marriage she believed to be solid was nothing more than a facade for a life he was leading on the side. Finally, the day came when Evelyn could no longer contain the anguish and anger that consumed her. After so many sleepless nights, tossing and turning in bed and trying to make sense of everything she had discovered, she decided it was time to confront Conrad. She needed the answers he had denied her for so long, and she wanted to hear the whole truth from his own mouth. She chose a weekend, a day when she knew he would be home without the excuse of work commitments. She prepared herself mentally, rehearsing what she would say, but at the same time, she couldn't predict how he would react. The tension was so great that, the moment she heard the front door open, her heart began to pound, and she had to take a deep breath to calm herself. Conrad entered the hall with a carefree expression, without imagining what awaited him. He was surprised to see Evelyn sitting in the living room, staring blankly. She had made coffee and was standing rigidly, as if she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "We need to talk," she said, her voice cold and firm, unlike the sweet and caring tone he was used to. Conrad hesitated for a second, but seeing the seriousness on Evelyn's face, he agreed and sat down. At first, she calmly asked about his work trips, the events he attended, and the obligations that kept him so busy. Conrad confidently began to answer, but with each evasive answer from him, Evelyn felt more anger rise in her chest. When she realized that he was still making the same excuses, Evelyn leaned forward, making it clear that she knew more than he imagined. "I already know everything, Conrad," she said, keeping her eyes fixed on him. "I know about Aurora, and about Allegra." The impact of those words was immediate. Conrad paled and was speechless for a few moments. He tried to stammer a response, but nothing coherent came out of his mouth. He knew he was facing a hopeless situation. Evelyn, now overcome with emotion, continued, her voice choked but determined. "I spent all these years by your side, trusting you, believing that we were a team, a family. And you built a parallel life, you hid a daughter from me. How could you do that? How could you lie to me so naturally?" Conrad, with no way out, lowered his head and finally admitted it. He said that he had met Aurora at a time of personal crisis, and that the relationship between them had been, according to him, unexpected. He claimed that, when he found out that Aurora was pregnant with Allegra, he felt responsible and decided to take responsibility for the daughter, but without breaking up with Evelyn. Every word he said sounded like a stab in the back of Evelyn's face. The apologies, the explanations, nothing seemed to ease the weight of the betrayal. She listened to him, but her mind was in a whirlwind of emotions. Tears began to flow as she remembered the years she had supported him unconditionally, the plans they had made, and the dreams that now seemed empty. When Conrad finished his confession, Evelyn felt a wave of exhaustion and pain. She stood up, looked at him with a mixture of disgust and sadness, and said in a shaky voice, "You destroyed me, Conrad. You turned what I thought was our life into a lie. I don't know how I'm going to go on after this, but I know I can't live pretending anymore." Without waiting for an answer, Evelyn left the room, closing the door behind her. She walked to the mansion's garden, where she finally felt free to fall apart. The tears came hard, and she let herself feel the depth of that pain, knowing that something had changed forever. After the devastating confrontation, Evelyn felt emotionally drained. She spent the next few days in silence, avoiding any prolonged contact with Conrad. The house that had once been her refuge now felt like a strange place, where memories of good times coexisted with the pain of the lies that had just been revealed. She knew she had to make a definitive decision, but the weight of the situation paralyzed her. In search of clarity, Evelyn sought comfort in Margot, her longtime friend. The two had met in college and had maintained a strong friendship marked by trust and mutual support. Margot, a practical and direct woman, was the first person Evelyn confided the full truth about what she was going through. When they arrived at Margot's house, Evelyn could barely hold back the tears that insisted on falling. After hearing the whole story, Margot looked at her with an expression of compassion, but also firmness. "Evelyn, you have to think about yourself now. She spent years dedicating herself to this marriage, building a life with a man who, at the first opportunity, hid a parallel life. You deserve more than this pain." Her friend's words were like an awakening. Evelyn realized that, until that moment, she had clung to the idea that she could, perhaps, fix what was broken. But the reality was clear. Conrad's betrayal was not a passing thing. He had built a life apart, actively choosing to lie and deceive. Determined to find answers within herself, Evelyn spent the rest of the week reflecting and pondering. She avoided any kind of interaction with Conrad, and he, perhaps understanding the impact of his actions, respected her space. But she became increasingly convinced that the only way to find peace again was to distance herself from everything that reminded her of that broken marriage. At the end of the week, Evelyn finally made her decision. On a quiet morning, she sat next to Conrad, who already seemed to sense what was to come. In a calm but resolute voice, she explained that she could not continue living with someone who had broken all the pillars of trust that supported their relationship. The idea of remaining in a relationship marked by secrets and lies was something she was not willing to accept. Conrad, despite being visibly remorseful, understood. He tried, in a restrained manner, to apologize, offering to make up for it in any way. However, Evelyn knew that, regardless of any attempt to remedy the situation, the pain of that betrayal would never completely disappear. After an honest and, in a way, final conversation, Evelyn left the mansion. She took with her only the essentials, but with the certainty that the decision was the first step towards rebuilding her own life. There was a lot to face, but for the first time in a long time, she felt an unexpected lightness, as if she could finally breathe without the weight of the lies that surrounded her. After leaving the mansion, Evelyn moved into a cozy apartment in a quiet part of town. She was focused on starting over, rebuilding her life and her sense of self, but she still carried the weight of the betrayal. To occupy her mind, she began organizing an exhibition of her paintings, something she had been putting off for years. Painting was her refuge, a way to vent her pain and transform her feelings into art. As she tried to move on, Evelyn received an unexpected call from Mark, the private detective. He asked to meet her in person, mentioning that he had uncovered more information about Conrad. Evelyn was apprehensive. She believed she already knew everything she needed to, but something in his voice made her uneasy. At the meeting, Mark presented new documents and information that revealed another aspect of Conrad's life, something he had hidden not only from her, but from everyone around him. Mark had discovered that Conrad was involved in a web of shady business dealings and long-standing debts that were not only financial, but also personal. He had made risky investments under Evelyn's name and even mortgaged the mansion they shared without her knowledge. Conrad had accumulated a staggering amount of debt with dangerous creditors, Mark explained. He had been using his fortune to cover these gaps, but now that they were separated, it was all untenable. He tried to hide it from you, but the situation is serious. Evelyn felt a new wave of anger and despair. In addition to his double life and secret family, Conrad had exposed her to profound financial risks, even jeopardizing the stability of her future. She realized that while she was emotionally invested in the relationship, he was taking advantage of her trust to manipulate her finances and make choices she had never had the chance to question. Determined to protect herself, Evelyn consulted a trusted attorney to understand how she could protect what was left of her and ensure that Conrad took responsibility for his actions. She found herself in the middle of a legal battle, where for the first time, she felt able to fight courageously for her safety and her future. With each hearing and document reviewed, she grew stronger, realizing that above all else, she needed to ensure that the impact of Conrad's mistakes would no longer affect her life. This final revelation brought a bitter clarity. Conrad had not only betrayed her trust, but he had also calculatedly placed her in a vulnerable position. Evelyn realized that leaving that marriage was the best decision she had ever made, and she now felt an unshakable determination to rebuild her life and prevent the mistakes of her past from haunting her again. Months had passed since Evelyn made the decision to leave Conrad and face the painful truth about their marriage. During that time, she had dedicated herself to rebuilding her life independently. The legal battles to protect herself financially from Conrad had been exhausting, but Evelyn now felt a sense of peace. She was finally beginning to see a new, stronger, more confident version of herself. One day, while preparing her gallery for a long-awaited exhibition, Evelyn received an unexpected letter. The sender was Conrad. She hesitated before opening the envelope, feeling a mixture of curiosity and distrust. The letter was handwritten, with careful handwriting, as if he wanted her to feel every word. In the letter, Conrad expressed his regret and, for the first time, acknowledged all the pain and suffering he had caused. He confessed to having been consumed by ambition and the desire to maintain two parallel lives, without thinking about the consequences for those around him. Conrad admitted that deep down he had always known that he was playing with Evelyn's trust, but he had refused to face the consequences of his actions. He thanked her for the years of support and all the love she had given him, making it clear that he knew he could never earn forgiveness, but that he needed to express his guilt. Evelyn read each word carefully. She felt a mixture of compassion and distance, as if the Conrad he spoke of in the letter was a stranger. As much as he expressed regret, Evelyn knew that his belated apology could not erase the damage he had caused. However, the letter served as a final point, something she had not even known she needed to close this chapter of her life. On the opening night of her exhibition, Evelyn felt an unexpected emotion when she saw the walls of the gallery adorned with her work. The canvases expressed all the nuances of her emotions over the past few months: pain, resilience, strength, and most of all, freedom. Each painting was a piece of her reconstruction, and the space was filled with people who had come not only to see the art, but to witness her transformation. In the midst of the crowd, she spotted Margot, her loyal friend, who was watching her with pride and affection. Beside her were new friends Evelyn had made in the process, people who had helped her rediscover who she was outside the shadow of her marriage to Conrad. As she walked through the exhibition, talking to visitors, Evelyn realized that she had found new meaning in her life. At the end of the night, she left the gallery and, looking up at the starry sky, felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in a long time. She was ready to move on, leaving behind not only the pain, but all the emotional burden she had carried for years. Evelyn knew that the story with Conrad had come to an end, and for the first time, she felt no fear or resentment. Conrad's letter, her exhibition and the support of her friends had been all she needed to close a cycle and open the doors to new possibilities. The farewell to Conrad was final, but more importantly, it was the beginning of a life where she was, finally, the protagonist. Subscribe to my channel, this is essential for YouTube to deliver my videos to you. Best regards.